Like Harry, if you know that A will get you into med school so that you can go save lives, that's your purpose. You've known you wanted to do that. Then yeah, you got to go get that A, and you should study because you have that higher purpose. If you know that A is going to like get you into law school so you can fight for innocent people on death row, then yeah, go get it. Like the A is not the end, but it can be a means to an end.
Podcast Junkies, episode 227. Welcome back. I'm your host, Harry Duran. If you're new to the show, this is the one where we interview fascinating, interesting folks around the potosphere. This week, I get to speak to Jordan Paris, a 22-year-old author, podcast host, and entrepreneur who's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Men's Health, Yahoo Finance, and MarketWatch. Pretty crazy, huh? But before I get into further details, in case you missed last week's episode, I spoke to Brenda Salinas Baker. She's working on some amazing projects over at Google, and we had a really good conversation. If you're interested in how you can optimize your podcast for Google and what it takes to build a quality show, I highly recommend you check that out, episode 226. This episode is brought to you by Focusrite and the Scarlett 2i2 sound card, my go-to sound card for ensuring I have quality audio in every podcast episode. I use the 2i2 frequently. The 3G is the latest version and provides high quality, high gain inputs, and I regularly use it with my Samson Q2U microphone. Can't say enough good things about Dan Hewley and the Focusrite team. Find out more about the full product line at podcastjunkies.com/Focusrite. Jordan's story is really interesting. He's interviewed a bunch of up-and-comers, as well as what people would consider big names in the industry: James Altucher, Grant Cardone, Robert Greene, Naveen Jain, all by the age of 22. We discuss the art of podcast interviewing, how to cultivate a growth mindset, and what's motivated Jordan to reach such incredible heights at a young age. It's a truly inspiring episode. Let's not forget that this episode is also brought to you by Fullcast. Fullcast.co is the website. If you need help with any aspect of your show, from launch to production and marketing, we can help. Schedule a free chat at fullcast.co/chat15 about your existing or new show. Stay tuned to the end of the episode where I reveal this week's retention hashtag. But for now, let's get into this conversation with Jordan. So Jordan Paris, we're going to intro you and welcome you to Podcast Junkies, now that we've been chatting for a couple of minutes.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You know, I've definitely respected your work for quite some time, like known of you and heard always great things about you. I think that's what spurred this. It was my last time I talked with Zach. He was just telling the story of you and him at Podcast Movement.
Yeah.
So, and that's only like the 97th time that he's brought you up in our conversations. So I was like, I'm going to reach out to him.
We had a check-in call earlier today, so they're excited about what's happening with Dolby and some new features. They just tested out the screen share function, which is pretty cool.
I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, that's coming soon.
What about like the video recording capabilities? Have you gotten to test that out yet?
Yeah, that's going to be coming after as well. So
you haven't tested that yet, though?
No, not the video recording, no. But they're using the same back end, so the quality is going to be pretty good. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, that's going to be big, because then there's going to be no excuses to use Zoom.
Exactly. And they're doing some neat stuff with, I always had this dream that I could figure out how to press a button and have our photos immediately go to social with our social handles, because I'm like, oh, I'm on Zoom now with Jordan. And then we could just do like, look at the camera, smile, and just kind of have it immediately be a tweet. And so they're playing around with some stuff that might make
cool.
that a little bit easier, because I come from just the marketing background, like spread the word, and if just everyone would be like, oh, I'm on now, like, and imagine if the tweet could go out now to show people that we're having it, and then later on maybe if you build in streaming, you'd be like, hey, you want to watch it, but just like turn chat off so you can kind of watch the interview live or listen to it. Super fans would like eat that stuff up. So.
What are you seeing as most effective now? Because I think that those audiogram videos, I think those are really dying. Like the stimuli there is becoming way too saturated.
Yeah, it depends. You just got to keep mixing it up. You got to keep doing like state changes, and you got to do different things to get people's attention, because everyone's attention span, especially now, like people are distracted by a whole range of things. And I think getting people's eye, whether it's in the Twitter stream or Instagram stream or on Facebook or on LinkedIn, we promote on all platforms, Medium, even YouTube. It's the number 2 search engine. So people don't consume the entire podcast on YouTube, but just by virtue of it being there,
Right.
it helps find it. So it's all about discoverability and people finding the content, and you just have to be creative with how you're doing it, because we just hit a million podcasts in Apple directory. So there's so many people producing shows now. Yeah. Pod News is a great newsletter. It's run by James Cridland. He was on a couple of weeks ago out of Australia, but podnews.net. I listen to that. I listen to the podcast, but he also does a newsletter. And so it's basically on my must listen every day just to get an update of what's happening in the podcast industry. It's a really good one.
Is this your main podcast? Do you have another
No, just this is the main. Yeah, this is the main one since 2014, and then Fullcast is the production company. So, but it was just again this idea of having these long form conversations. So I'm curious, when you started the term podcast, like came on your radar, and when you heard about it.
Yeah, I think in the middle of high school, probably, which for me. 6 years ago, so because I'm 22 now. Yeah, and I think it was my uncle telling me to listen to this Lewis Howes guy.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that's what I started listening to. Maybe towards the end of high school. Yeah, definitely not the middle. Definitely towards the end. So 2014, 2015.
When you were listening to that, were you consuming any type of content that was that flavor, like inspirational or whatever category you would put Lewis in?
I mean, I just started reading Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, and that was like my first venture into that world. But no.
So even reading Tony Robbins, like who put you onto that? Is that something?
Yeah, same guy. Is that Uncle Brian? Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about him. Like, has he always been like into this self-improvement type stuff, inspiring stuff?
Yeah, he really is. A very fit guy, all about his health. He's a chiropractor, and he actually, like a couple of years, maybe a year ago, took it real far. He went on some sort of shaman retreat in God knows where. Like he's about that, man, and he's about the psychedelics. But he's an interesting guy. Really interesting. He's a pretty badass uncle to have. He is. He got me into working out and
good.
And, a lot of good things have come from him.
Shout out to Uncle Brian. Does he listen to your show a lot?
Well, it's a weird thing. It took a while because he very much had the role of mentor to me. So it took a while for him to take me seriously. And even now, he will only listen to the episodes with if he sees I come out with an episode, he'll see what comes out, but
yeah,
only listen if it's Mark Manson or Robert Greene or someone that he really, really, really knows. I guess I'll be listening in a couple of days because Mark Manson, another episode with him is coming out. So Uncle Brian will be tuning in next week. And I know he just consumed Mark's latest Audible, his Audible original, Love Is Not Enough. It was really good.
Yeah.
I consumed it probably about a month ago in preparing for that interview, and Brian just consumed it as well. He was texting me about it the other day.
You should have Mark give your uncle a shout out.
He really loved. Brian keeps texting me do you think we could get dinner with Mark Manson in New York? Dude, I need you to make this happen.
That's hilarious. So when you were listening to Lewis Howes, there's something about appreciating the content as a listener. When was the click for you that this might be something that you could do yourself? Yeah,
it was never a while listening to that podcast that it clicked for me that I could do it for myself. Even when Lewis Howes had Mark Manson on, for the first time, and I had, I'd listened to that episode, and maybe this is 2016, 2017. Yeah, I think it was 2017. So it was 9 months after The Subtle Art came out, and I hadn't had a podcast yet. I was still a year out from having one, and I heard that conversation, loved it, remember it, and it never occurred to me one day, less than a year you'll have a podcast, and less than 2 years from now you'll be talking with Mark Manson on that
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
You know, like it never, like I never, like I was never inspired in that way.
yeah.
It all just kind of came together. Like I just started this podcast in April 2018, and I can't tell anyone why. Like I don't know. I don't remember. I just did it, and I sucked, and I got better, and I started taking it more seriously, and things started happening, and then I took it more seriously, and then 2019 is when it really clicked. Like, oh, all these books behind me, Harry. I could reach out to these people.
Oh yeah.
That's what I did.
Talk a little bit about those early days then. Like what was some of the things that you know, where did you just, was it all self-taught? Obviously, all the information about how to start a podcast, you and I both know is out there. It's not a function of like when you're helping people and teaching them, you're shortening that learning for them and making sure they're not chasing, going down rabbit holes and learning stuff about the wrong equipment to use. But I'm wondering if you could talk about how that process for you was, the finding out information, figuring out how to start, who to interview, what that format of your show was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I had this very imperfect start, obviously. And, I was growing as I was going and figuring things out along the way. And, I started off on Anchor and it was just not a good podcast. It didn't sound good. I wasn't good. Like nothing about it was good. I thought it was good. I thought it was the best kept secret, like a lot of people do. And I wasn't. And, I'm just very resourceful. Like, Google, YouTube, like, and not every answer you get on there is right, so I try it, trial and error, and just like figuring things out. Like it takes me, like I just couldn't, for the longest time, I couldn't figure out like the in-person interview setup without putting like a stupid like Blue Yeti microphone between the two of us. It just sounds horrible. It took me 10 months to figure that out. Like now I know of many solutions. Some that are really easy, some that are, that are a little more complex. Like, and now I got all the equipment. Like, I know exactly what equipment to get. Like, actually, yeah, I don't know. Every time, like, I'm just over time, I'm just becoming like a better interviewer. When I definitely wasn't in the beginning, but now I'm at the point where I think my interview skills, I think that's what really makes the show. It's the number one thing I get with people reaching out to me. It's like it just has to do with my interview skills. And I still miss every now and then. It takes two to tango. Really does.
Yeah, yeah.
So not every episode's like awesome, but I think that my interview skills are like well above average to the point where, that definitely is a big differentiator. I actually put together a doc. I haven't released it yet, but I put together this document of 12 interview tips. I've only shared it with like my clients so far. It's like, I just care about interviewing so much. It's just like this art form for me.
Yeah, totally.
And so that piece of content is just so sacred. Again, I'm going to post it as like a LinkedIn document in the next couple of weeks. I've been sitting on it for a month already, but yeah, I love interviewing, and I'm just trying to constantly become better at it, consuming, studying other great interviewers, also studying myself, because if you're a football player, Harry, like you can't, Harry, the football player. Oh yeah. If Harry's on the Philadelphia Eagles, he's a linebacker. You can't just, or you may say he's a wide receiver. You can't just like watch, when you're watching tape, you can't just watch the plays that you scored touchdowns. Like that's not going to teach you anything. You have to watch the tape, run the tape back on the plays that you got beat on real bad. And then you got to learn from that. Like, so when my podcast comes out Monday morning, I listen to it every time. And I found myself, only listening to the interviews that I liked and thought were good. And then I was like, I kind of realized it. Like, no, you got to watch the tape even when it's bad. And so now I don't skip. I always, and I'm just like things that I could have done better. I'm a little hard on myself. Not too hard to the point where it makes me depressed about my errors, but like there's just so much room for improvement always. And that's a very hopeful thing.
How did you start thinking about the types of guests that you wanted on the show? And obviously, we have links to all your past guests, and so there's a nice who's who in there. But when you first got started, you did mention the library of books that you had as an inspiration. But
yeah, oh yeah.
How did you start thinking about that process when you started booking those early guests, and when did you start noticing the ability to connect with more and more influential folks?
Now, early on, I was just doing it for production's sake. Like it was just doing it just to do it. There wasn't any inspiration really. Like I was just kind of interviewing anyone I could interview. You know what I mean? Then I think around like in the 60s, episode 60s, around 70, 80, around that range, I really start realizing like, the inspiration that is literally my library. And, it's to the point now, like, I've gotten to the point where I've interviewed just about everyone who's written these books who's alive. Obviously, you see Shel Silverstein here. The guy's dead. I haven't interviewed him. Dale Carnegie, he's dead. I haven't interviewed him. Tony Robbins, I have not interviewed. He's alive. So that's an aspiration. But, all these other people, yeah, like this is my favorite shelf here. Brendan Burchard is on that favorite shelf. I haven't interviewed him. And then Tim Ferriss is also there. Have not interviewed him, but yeah, that's it. So everyone else is a go. Yeah. And that was my inspiration.
What's your intention when you get on the microphone with these folks? Like, what do you want to happen after that hour conversation is over?
Yeah, something that I need to focus more on is becoming friends with them and building the relationship, because I'm just so focused on the listener and like how to make it interesting for them. But then again, you think like Jordan Harbinger said like the opposite. He says a big mistake is to try to be,
try to be friends with them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've spoken about this with Eric Hunley of Unstructured as well.
Oh, yeah, Eric, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's just understanding not necessarily like what you want to achieve or get out or build in terms of the relationship with them, but just, to your point, thinking about how do you know if a interview was successful or not?
It's a feeling. It really is. Someone told me to do this the other week, and I did it. I was like, what the heck? Why not? It might actually be cool. Like rate every guest you've had, because I already have a spreadsheet of all my guests with like information there. And I was like, all right, I just add another column. Rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, like the vibe that they gave you. Very general thing, It can't really be explained. And I think that the average rating I gave, my guess was a 3.88, which is, I think, good. Because there are like a few ones. And again, like I said, it takes two to tango. I mean, I think it's successful when the other guest, when the guest brings the fire. Like yesterday, I had Dean Graziosi, and he brought it, man. Like we got. Here's how. Okay, here's the definitive measurement too. Also, this is the biggest thing. Did I get something new out of them? Not all the things that Dean talks about all the time. If it's the same old interview, then I failed. Yeah, did that a little bit with Dean yesterday, so I'm happy about that. And then like it was like a trifecta yesterday. Like he brought the energy, we got new stuff out of him, and at the end of it, he's like, dude, I want to give you my phone number, like my personal phone number. Like anytime like you're feeling some type of way or you going through some challenge, like literally I'm giving you permission to like text me, and I'll save you time. I was like,
that's awesome.
I was like, dope. So I was like texting Dean yesterday.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I was never saying. So like it was just a trifecta. Like it was everything went right there. Like those are the three main things, I think. Because, continuing the relationship is part of it, but first and foremost, it was definitely interesting, or it's going to be interesting when it is eventually released. It's going to be very interesting for the listener. I know that.
How much prep do you do?
Oh, I do a lot. Books, podcasts. If I don't read the whole book, I mean, I go through part of it, or Audible, make highlights in there. Sometimes write in the margin, like ask, while I'm out. Because I have time to think about these interviews. I book them very far out. And I do like one per week 2 max. So like I'll be out and I'll just be thinking about it because it's just my pride and joy. Like this is the joy of my life, this podcast. And so I'll write I'll go notes on my phone and just write some thoughts that come, some bullet points there. I keep notes in Microsoft OneNote. I have a Microsoft OneNote page for every guest, and that's where everything in the end gets transferred from my phone to Microsoft OneNote. And, there's bio, bullet points, questions, and then I just kind of like organize it. And, the idea is not to, like, you have to be open to veering from your agenda. Like, it has to be natural. It can't be like an interrogation. Like, Harry, where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Love it.
Next question.
Yeah, love it. Next question. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
Favorite
Next
ice cream. Favorite ice cream.
Yeah, right. Who cares? That's boring. It's weird. Got to be open to veering from that. The best podcasts are like when because I always have to know where I'm going first. That never changes. Like the first thing is always like the first thing. That doesn't change. I got to know where I'm going first so I'm not stumbling all over my words and it's awkward and whatever. But after that, like we could hit flow and the structure, everything else could very well go out the window. That's what happened yesterday. And those are the best podcasts when your agenda goes out the window.
Yeah, it's the ability to manage that on the fly and the ability to see where you're given an opportunity. Like if you talk about something and I want to pull that thread and I want to be like, wow, Jordan, you just mentioned something really interesting. Something that caught my interest was the fact that you talked about a spreadsheet and then you gave me the number of the average and then you gave me the number to 2 decimal points out. So I'm like, okay, because you said something about who you are when you did that, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna bring that back. So just it's that listening, that sort of like active listening, where if you think about your listener is there with us. Like I always say, there's 3 people in a conversation. There's me as the host, there's you as the guest, and there's the listener. They've pulled up a stool. They're sitting here with us. You, the listener, I'm talking to you right now. That's Jordan and I and you. And I want to make sure you're included in this conversation as well, because I don't want to miss an opportunity to dig deep on something, because I've listened to shows and I'm like, oh, ask him about that. Ask him about that. You're just like, oh, why didn't you ask him that question? And obviously, or maybe this is something only podcast hosts do, because I'm always like fascinated by the art of interviewing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to be active in. What I found is just the video is great because I love the body language. I love asking people a thoughtful question and then seeing their eyes go up and then they go up and they're like, and it goes up and to the left and they're like, and you can like, oh, they're thinking like, and then this is the other thing, to be comfortable with silence. And so many times you want to jump in, you're like, this is going too long. This is going too long. It's too quiet. But it's the magic of editing. You could always, tighten it up in the production. So I'm just like, I keep my mouth shut, and the longer it goes, the better I know the answer will be.
Always say less than necessary. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Oh, what is it that makes you feel comfortable, Harry, in like when you're sitting down to do a podcast? Like for me, it's like I said, knowing where I'm going first, knowing the first thing that I'm going to do, the first thing that I'm going to say.
Yeah, for me, it's trying to, as quickly as possible, get to the human connection. I just want to know who you are as a human being, what makes you tick. I don't want you to tell me things that you want me to hear. I want you to tell me things that you may be uncomfortable telling me.
Yeah.
And that comes with building a level of trust, building rapport, and putting people at ease. You've invited people into your podcast house, and you're like, okay, this is a safe space, and you can talk about anything you want to talk about. And I've been on both sides of the conversation, so I know what it's like. And I never try to paint people into a corner, never try, ask gotcha questions. And, I just see where the conversation goes. And if you're actively listening, people's human nature, they'll let out things that they love or they're passionate about, not in a direct way, but they'll do it with the level of energy.
Oh, yeah.
If you see them laughing about something, if you see their body language or they've relaxed, and they're like, oh yeah, like I love telling this story, or yeah, that's my favorite thing. And you're like, oh, they really like this. And people love talking about things that they're passionate about. So, and I get the sense that you're, for being as young as you are, but I feel like you're an old soul because you have this genuine curiosity for self-improvement. And I'm wondering if you were like that in school, like, you mentioned spreadsheets and, your meticulous OneNote. So was that you as a student as well?
No, no, 'cause I don't care about that stuff. I don't care about that kind of learning. Like none of those topics in school. Like I don't really care, man.
You don't care about the learning, but you do care
Not
about
not in school. I care about learning. It's not, yeah.
and so what type of student were you?
I can get all A's. I don't, didn't apply myself. And so my average was like, few A's, few B's. Like I think high school, my GPA was 3.42. And then college, it was like after year one at like 3.65. I was really like actually applying myself. And then I was like, screw this. I'm going to start a podcast and a business and I'm going to like blaze my own trail. And my GPA went down to 2.7 real quick, really quickly. And I'm finishing with 3.01, I believe. So yeah, people don't know this. People forget this too. Like I'm actually graduating in like 3 days.
Congratulations.
I've this whole time I've been like an actual university student. Like it's actually I forget it too because I don't do anything for it. I do the absolute bare minimum. And, when it gets to the point, like the best thing that ever happened is like what if scores. Like Canvas has this technology, essentially like not project management software, but like learning management software where everything is. That's what Canvas is. And you can type in, it's your grade book there. You can type in like, okay, if I get a 0 out of 40 on this assignment, what will my grade be? If I get, and you can just do it for like a bunch of assignments, like the rest of the semester. So like once I would see like, oh, I don't need to do anything the rest of the semester. I would just like, I'm not going to do it. What's the difference for me and what I'm trying to achieve? What is the difference between having a 3.4 GPA and a 3.01 or a 2.7? Like for me, it doesn't really matter. Like it's about knowing, what you want, but also knowing why you want it, because the quest for an A is meaningless without a purpose beyond just getting that A. Like Harry, if you know that A will get you into med school so that you can go save lives, that's your purpose. You've known you wanted to do that. Then yeah, you got to go get that A, and you should study because you have that higher purpose. If you know that A is going to like get you into law school so you can fight for innocent people on death row, then yeah, go get it. Like the A is not the end, but it can be a means to an end. And yeah, like for me as an entrepreneur, on the other hand, it was study less, socialize more, learn how to effectively communicate your ideas, and spend every living, breathing second implementing those ideas. And that's what I did. And I'm coming out of college and I don't have to get a job because I run a company just like Harry does.
What do you think it was that you could point to that made you different, or the way you think different from what you would see on a regular basis being high school and then in college from like your fellow students? Because I would imagine the majority of them are in the process of looking for a job, and even now with this, what's happening with COVID and Corona, like this is probably the worst time to graduate right now. Yeah. So how would you describe, how you see the world versus, how they see the world?
I am a questioner. I question things, also as an interviewer, but also as just a challenger. Is that the way we're really like? Do I really have to do things that way? Always been like that. Always been.
As a little kid too.
Yeah. Like Curious George, my spirit animal, like my favorite movie. I'm Curious Jordan.
I like that.
Sometimes it gets me into trouble. That's cool. That's what comes with being Curious George. Curious George got into trouble. That's fine. But I'm a questioner, and I ask that question. Do we really? Do I really have to do things like that? Do I have to do that? Yeah.
Why are we doing?
Why? Yeah. Why? Oh my God. Especially when it comes to grades and like busy work assignments. Oh yeah. And I think a lot of people are the opposite, like succumbing to the system and just doing what you're told and never really questioning that, never thinking of other possibilities, like just kind of going with the flow instead of like directing the flow. I don't know. I mean, that's a cliche, but like,
No, being in charge of your own destiny.
yeah, I just don't go with the flow. Like, I just don't do that.
What was the conversation like with your parents as this was all happening?
They're very accepting.
From day one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, my mom doesn't like to hear complaining about school. You know, she'll be happy with, my career choices. She's like, they're very happy with my career choices. Very, very. Yeah, no, I've always had very permissive parents. Just kind of like, you want to do cocaine, Jordan? Go ahead, do it. Yeah, we trust you. Yeah.
It sounds like they saw who you were as a child and realized that if within boundaries, if they allowed you to explore the questions you were asking, that you would come to the answer yourself.
Me, yeah. Yeah, that's taking a like risk though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's not ever like, yeah, not everyone's going to figure that out. I, with just a lot of luck and lucky bounces, just it's so far turned out pretty well, and I'm thinking it's going to continue to turn out well. Yeah.
I've been reading about one of the coaches I'm working with. His name is Alex Scharf, and he's got this book called The Entrepreneurial Personality Type. Your guide to the most important and misunderstood people among us. And it's fascinating because basically his whole concept is that entrepreneurs are just like a whole different breed of human beings, and the way we think about the world. And he talks a lot about being in momentum, and like we always have to be moving or else we feel like something's wrong, and we always have to be building something or else we feel like we're not doing what we're set on this earth to do. So
yeah, I suffer from that big time. I create work for myself, busy, like it's annoying.
Yeah, check out the book. He's offering it free shipping, free with shipping. It's freemomentumbook.com. It's really interesting. He helps basically companies that are scaling at different points in their business, like $500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to $3 million, $3 million to $10 million, $10 million to $30 million, $30 million to $100 million. And at each point, like you have to go through different challenges. And he's just kind of mapped them all out. He's got this framework that he uses. He's been doing this for like 20, 30 years, and really smart guy. Been inspired. And it's interesting when I'm around people like that. Like I feel like I'm with my tribe, and I feel like, these people that get me, I can speak the language and stuff.
Well, with people like what?
Just entrepreneurial type, yeah. People that are, and I'm wondering if maybe you've had that experience as well. Like when you're around people that are excelling.
I'm a chameleon. I really am. I mean, I think we all do this to a certain extent, but I'll even notice like my speaking patterns and tonalities and my vocabulary change on a dime depending on who it is.
Yeah.
Very much so. Like I don't smoke weed. Like I don't do that, but I could mix right into the stoner like vibe. And I've done it so many times being the last 4 years being an 18 to 22-year-old college student and, in party situations. Like I've blended in there many times.
You're like, dude, I'm so high. You watch enough movies, you figure it out.
Yeah. Growing up, I really didn't watch movies. Like I just didn't. You asked me, did you ever see that movie? The answer is always no. Always. Unless it's The Great Gatsby, Curious George, or Wolf of Wall Street. I haven't seen it. So, yeah, like and again, being like 22 years old and, being, very much, I'm playing up a little bit. Like I'm supposed to be in like AA right now, but I'm kind of like being forced to play in the major leagues with some of the people that I deal with. And then I go hang out with my friends, and it's a very different thing. Very different. I have to like optimize for a lot of people all the time, wear a lot of different hats. Yeah. And it's not like a bad thing, but.
No, not at all. What do your friends think about what you're doing?
Oh, I think it's great. Yeah. You either hear all the time, like, wow, or, I've even heard before too, like, I had a classmate. He's probably like 45 years old, veteran. He's with this program that essentially he's like getting paid to go to school. I became friends with him. Tony's his name, and great guy. And he was telling me a couple of months ago, like Jordan, people were talking about, how you got a big ego. I was like, damn. I was like, I mean, they're right, but I was like, I'd love to know that people are like talking about me like that, because like the instinct when, who was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about this with Dean. Yeah. The instinct when, like people see you doing well and they can't figure it out, like they don't know how to do it. Their instinct is to be like, kind of knock it, like pretty much criticize what you don't have. I think it's part of human nature, like just criticizing what we don't have. Like we always think the girl that like, that we're not with, like that we haven't had a chance to get with, like we think like they're, and I'm speaking in 22-year-old terms, but like, because you're probably married, are you?
No, I'm actually divorced now.
Oh, so maybe you get it.
I have a girl, yeah. Yeah.
But like, I always think like, girl that like I haven't had a chance to get with, like, oh, she's, or she's with this other guy. Oh, she's not that hot anyway. And with Dean, it was like, he was so successful at my age. He had 25 apartments when he was 22, owned them, and people were like, his friends were like, I don't know where Dean's getting all this money. Like, he must be. We're pretty sure he's dealing drugs. And so, yeah, the instinct is definitely to like kind of knock what you can't have. And like like I said, there's definitely some truth to like the ego thing. Like I'm definitely a cocky bastard, but like it's okay. I'm working on it.
What are you doing to keep yourself grounded?
I think it's all up here. I question myself, and constantly I'm trying to like seek out my blind spots, my mental blind spots, and like it takes months to like, see things come around that you thought you were so sure about, but like you actually were wrong. And it's hard to explain, man. Very hard to explain, but just, I mean, yeah, things that you thought were absolutely true and about yourself that or in life that, just really aren't. I guess it doesn't suffice, but I'm just constantly trying to knock myself down. And sometimes it's a bad thing, actually, but
the ego is a tricky thing, and I've been through enough experiences in life to understand how it can wear like a bunch of different masks. And I think the best thing to do is be open to surrounding yourself with people who may sound initially critical or may sound like they're trying to knock you down, or just different flavors, but be open to different opinions and not always being around people who are just kind of saying the same thing or like propping you up.
Being agreeable and
yeah. And I think it's important. And to your point, and this idea of you questioning things early on, I think you'll just have to find different things to question and challenge yourself, the sooner the better, into different ways of thinking and seeing the world. And some of the best conversations I've had on the show have been with people whose point of view on whatever it is, politics or whatever, pick the topic, is very different from mine. And it's an interesting, and I've had great conversations, because the art of disagreeing without being disagreeable is really, really important. And so, I make sure as you continue to grow and to continue to have these conversations, as much as, it's great to have the people who are, big names, it's also like pick topics that you're just like, oh, I don't know a lot about that, and I feel like I'm in over my head, but it'll push you, to just kind of like bring your A game.
I did that with this company, Irwin Naturals, and like I've been seeing his supplements in like Whole Foods and whatnot for a while, but he was one of the podcast booking agents, actually. Well, who was he with? Jeremy Ryan Slate's company? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But anyway, yeah, one of the rare times that I actually like take on one of those people. We talked about for 50 minutes cannabis. Yeah, that's like, and the easiest interview to prepare for ever, because I was dead set against it forever, and like I just had this natural line of questioning, like all the tough questions, all like, oh my gosh, yeah, it was probably, it's one of my favorite interviews ever, actually.
How'd it go?
Really great. Like all the bad things you hear about cannabis, like I just addressed it. Like, for example, me being 22, like brain development, like that's definitely, like that would be a concern. And, does it, stupid things like, oh, does it kill brain cells? Like, and so just kind of addressed all of those things. And him being a physicist, it was a good person to talk to about. Like, I wouldn't talk to like a friend who smokes weed about that. Like, you know what I mean?
Dude, it's great.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's funny.
And what would you say you learned from that conversation?
I learned that it was okay and that I should be more open to it.
And what did you learn about handling conversations in which you're not initially the subject matter, but coming at it from a place of being genuinely curious?
It's hard to verbalize. I was actually going to ask you, what are some like the rules of disagreeing without being disagreeable?
The key is to take the emotion out of it, and the key is to understand. I studied astrology a little bit too. So what's fascinating, when I first there for the first couple of weeks, and they pulled my chart up and it was on the wall, and he started telling me about me, and he started telling me things about me that very few people know. And it was like, oh, because this house isn't here, and this is like, you like your privacy, but you like technology, and then you like the ability to communicate, connect people. And I was like, and he's like, what do you do? I was like, oh, podcasting. I was like, that makes perfect sense. And I was like, oh shit. Like, and the more he went in, the more I realized like there's people, and this is doesn't have to apply to astrology, whether people, whatever, regardless of what people think about it, but people come into this world hardwired with certain beliefs, and that's why we have Republicans and conservatives and people who like love going to church, and people who are like profoundly spiritual, or people who are like atheists. So that's kind of like who they are, and that's their blueprint. And so you're never going to get them to change. Like it's literally like, and you see it play out in politics all the time. Like you're trying to get people to change the way they are, and what I realize is like, people are the way they are because that's how they came to this earth. And sometimes what you want to do is understand, why do you see the world the way you do? And if they can explain it, and you're like, okay, I don't agree, but I get it. I get that's why you see the world that way. And I can't, in the same way that I can't fault you, and saying that you're a crazy person, or, that you're, or I can't diminish your viewpoint and saying the way I view the world is better than yours. And I can't place a value judgment on their perception of the world. I can't. I'm just like, oh, okay. So it's kind of like neutral. It's not scoring. It's not like, that value, what you say is better or worse than mine. It's just not. It's just if you kind of neutral. And I think this may be stuff that when they teach people when they're debating, just kind of this ability to just have, what you want to do is not shut off the conversation. You don't want to say something that's going to like offend people. You're not trying to say gotcha. You're not be like, that's stupid. Like, why would that's idiotic. Like, like when you have tough conversations and people who don't know how to manage them, it quickly can get into the conversation being over, or worse than that, you get punched in the face, or even worse than that, people, road rage and all that shit, people pulling out a gun for stupid stuff. Like, so I think just coming from a place of human to human, genuine connection, genuine empathy. You don't know what their childhood was like. You don't know where they were raised. You don't know what they've been through. Like, unless you have a 3-hour Joe Rogan conversation, maybe you do, but you can only get so deep, and you're like, okay, I understand, and I respect your opinion, and then if they respect your opinion, then we're fine, and you can shake hands at the end, and you've learned a little bit more about how these another viewpoint lives.
Yeah, like I asked Grant Cardone about his Scientology beliefs. Yeah, I was dreaming of like interviewing him and asking that for a long time, actually, like before I ever thought I would. But like, okay, so the opposite of what you just said is, and I voted for the guy, but Donald Trump on the debate stage with Hillary Clinton, like, he's scoring, he's like, he's placing value on her like beliefs, and like, yeah, he just doesn't go about it the right way. Like, I don't know, maybe that's good. Maybe that's part of what got him elected. Like, maybe creating that drama is like and being like that, acting like that's a good, maybe it worked to his advantage. I don't know. But like, I've been watching presidential debates for like as a human behavior thing because that's my favorite thing in the world. Just the way, again, and I didn't even vote for her, but like the way that she handled it. Oh my God. Awesome. She like to keep a poker face the whole time.
Yeah.
Like not react was just so admirable. Cause like if she did react, like it would have been like over for her. Like, oh, a woman can't be president, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like she's too emotional. Yeah. It would have been a mess if she reacted. Now we're off topic, but actually you
No,
reminded me.
it's all the same thing. Has your view of Trump changed since you voted for him?
I like him. I just think that there are some, like he needs to observe the fourth law of power from the 48 laws of power. Always say less than necessary, because the more you say, the more likely you are to say something stupid. That's one of the reasons that you should say less than necessary. And there's a great story in the 48 laws of power about that. Like, you know, this person in like medieval times, he was going to get, I think it was Russia, like he was sent to be executed. He was going to be hung, and the rope broke. And traditionally, what happened back then, at least in this place, you know, like if the rope broke, then they would take that as a sign, and they would not try to hang the person again, and they just let him off. And the person that was there for the hanging, who was like, he went and delivered the news to the king, and was having the king sign these papers to, like, you know, let the guy off the hook. And the king goes, well, wait a minute. Did he say anything after the rope broke? And the messenger goes, yeah, actually, he did. And what he told the king was, he said, and this is exactly what the person said when the rope broke. These stupid Russians, they can't even make rope right. And the king heard that and puts down the paper, pushes it away, doesn't sign it, and says, all right, well, let's prove to him how great our rope is. And they hung him again, and the rope did not break this time. If he would have just kept his mouth shut, oh, he would have lived, but he couldn't. And I feel that way a lot with Trump, that, you know, a lot of just things that he says are just not necessary. Like, just say less, buddy. Like, you're good. Like, stop.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the best quality in a leader, because what they say is really a reflection of who they are as a person. And the fact that he's saying it is because he believes it, and that's the scary part sometimes.
Well, he needs to tweet less.
He's had an interesting run, and I think the experiment in my mind is, I feel like it's run its course, but we'll see. It'll be an interesting November as of this recording. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see the effect of, like, all, you know, the accumulation of all these actions and words over the past 4 years, to see like did that, you know, positively sway people or negatively sway people. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that hate him, but we'll see what the votes say in November.
So when you talked about, you know, it was important for you to understand, you're asking early on why. So just to kind of bring this all back, and it's the question you asked a lot when you were younger. Have you thought about what your purpose is and what's going to keep you driving? If you think about the next 2-3 years, the podcast and what you're building right now, what's going to be the motivation to keep you moving forward?
I think that's just the fact that I have fun is what is going to keep me here and stay in the course.
Who's the most inspiring person you know?
James Altucher.
Why?
Because he's, in my opinion, one of the best interviewers, and he's so curious, and his curiosity makes the show, and he's not afraid to, like, stumble over his words, and he's not afraid to sound stupid, and he just, yeah. And he's so smart too. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been watching his Instagram lives. Oh, so good. He's really got he just has this foresight into, like, the whole situation that's going on with the world right now, with all his different experiences, with, being broke, with running hedge funds, with running companies and selling them. And like it's like all compounded, and he makes a lot of sense. Like I'd vote for him if he ran for president. is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, put the bug in his ear. Yeah, I'm sure he'd be pretty popular. A couple of questions as we wrap up. What's something you've changed your mind about recently? Something where you thought things you believed either strongly or somewhat strongly about something, that this is the way things should be, and then something happened, and you're like, oh, maybe it's not the way I thought it was, or maybe something happened to give you a different perspective on the topic, and you're like, oh, maybe I can revisit that topic.
I don't know. I know there are things.
Sounds like it happened with cannabis.
Okay. Yeah, it did. Because 2.5 years ago, I wrote a very negative article about it with all these cherry picked scientific references and just condemning it. Yeah. And now, like, every 2 weeks, every other week, I do cannabis in edible form. Like I had these mints. I don't have those anymore. Like, for example, 20 mints, 5 milligrams each mint. And I would do 2 mints because 10 is not a lot, but it's perfect. And I got those in November, and it took me until April to finish them. So just to give you an idea, like, that's how little I use it. Like, I don't abuse it. I had 10 experiences in that time frame. So yeah, now I have drops. Just a big fan, man. Like, big fan of it, just for like creatively, and like it just enables me to think about things in a very new way. Like you can only view problems and things a certain number of ways. Like, it's like a fourth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I've definitely learned a lot.
And it's probably also helped you understand the importance of having a flexible mind, because if you think about the way you thought about things before that on the topic, and now after that conversation, now you think about things differently. Like, well, if it can happen with that topic, then it could probably happen with other topics. So it kind of keeps you with an open mind. Yeah,
like another example is I know we mentioned audiograms, and I think that at one point this was true, but like, audiograms were like this awesome way to market podcasts, but they're definitely I haven't changed my mind about them. They're still good. You're like, why not? But I'm in the process of changing I'm teetering back and forth right now on those. Yeah.
Coming into the home stretch here, just want to tell you, I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. It feels like it's been a long time coming. I want to say that I'm extremely proud of what you've done. It's very admirable, and I love your work ethic. And I just having been doing this for as long as I have, I've seen a lot of people try, and it's very easy to notice sometimes when someone is serious about this as something that they want to continuously get better on. I can tell by how you tackle this from the beginning, and learning even more about you now, who as a person, in terms of your inquisitive nature, that it's not surprising to see that why you've had the success you've had. So just want to congratulate you for that, and wishing you a lot more success as you continue to grow as a podcaster.
Thank you, Harry. You're very sharp and well-spoken, and you seemingly do everything right. Say everything right. And you sound like a meditation teacher that really wants you to win.
Yeah, I do. I do want you to win. Yeah. No, and just knowing, where I was when I was 22, and a lot of the mistakes that I made. Continue to surround yourself with people in different professions, and that will help you grow, both from a business standpoint, obviously, but also from a mindset perspective. Whatever your connection is with spirit and spirituality, like go deeper on that, and that mindset you have of always asking why, ask it for all aspects of your life. And if it's in it, and if there's stuff that makes you uncomfortable, that's the stuff that you dig deeper in. because if you can work through those knots, you're going to come out a better person at the end of it.
Thank you, Harry.
Yeah. Where's the best place for folks to track you down online?
Hey, Growth Mindset University is the podcast, and it's a lot of fun.
Thanks again, Jordan. I appreciate you coming on. So thanks again to Jordan for sharing his story. Truly inspiring. He's a character, and it's just a testament to his dedication, everything that he's been able to do at 22, all the folks that he's had on the show, his passion for podcasting, and really the drive. And the story tells it all. What he's been able to accomplish is truly impressive. So hats off to Jordan. I see nothing but good things in your future. Remember that full show notes are available at podcastjunkies.com/227. Intro and outro music composed by Cedar and Soil. cedarsoil.com for the full list of music in his catalog. Podcast production and marketing provided by Fullcast. Sign up for a free consultation at fullcast.co/chat15 to discuss how we can help you and your business with your podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or past episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/podcastjunkies. As always, special thanks to our sponsor, Focusrite, and the Scarlett 2i2 sound card. Make sure you tune in next week for my engaging conversation with my good friend Liz LaJoy of the Zen Money podcast. If you made it this far, no doubt you're looking for the retention hashtag. Let's go with Jordan22 as the hashtag. Thanks again for all you do to support the show. Love you guys. Catch you next week.